It looks really nice. I think we gotta do this more often. Black power, everyone. Gonna wait for our viewership to build a little bit up in the building. Y'all already know what time it is.
Ooh, that smells good.
I'm trying to convince him to cook with me on, that capitalist holiday. Mm-hmm. Black power, y'all. What's up? It's that time. It's that time again. Yes, intelligent lady. Black power, Comrade Cameron. When you come into the room, please make sure you share and put hashtag shared in the comments. When you share, we are at 5 viewers. I can't see y'all. I think I might need glasses.
I can't see either, and I got glasses. It's 5.
All right, y'all. Come on, share on your timeline. Share in any of the groups that you're in. And let's go ahead and get this thing started. How you feeling? Feeling good?
I feel good.
Okay. Y'all like our new set? We got the little grass and the reeds in the background and all of that kind of stuff like that. We trying to dress it up real cool. We trying to dress it up for y'all and all of that good stuff.
Give y'all a little bit of variety.
Yeah. But without further ado, we want to welcome y'all to the Revolutionary Book Trap, which takes place every Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on the Black Camel Facebook page, with your boy, Chief Dia, and my girl, my comrade,
Chief Nyah. What's up?
Hey, so again, welcome. And as you all know, right now, we're in the middle of How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, which is such a powerful read so far, and it was written by Walter Rodney. And today we are continuing our discussion in chapter 2 of the book, where Comrade Rodney is now giving us examples of African societies prior to European invasion, and it's so good. But before we get into that, today is a very special day. And it's a very special day because this episode of the Revolutionary Book Trap, and then for the next 3 episodes to follow, me and my comrade Nyah will be raising resources for our next Atlanta homeless food drive. Yes, Black power. So, January 18th, which is the weekend of Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, the Atlanta unit, we will be putting on our next homeless food drive. Yes, we're coming back again with another homeless food drive. So today, and for the next 3 episodes of the Revolutionary Book Trap, we're going to be on here talking about the food drive and raising resources. And today, for our goal, we have a goal of raising
$50.
$50. So we know we can do it. We got about 15 viewers, well 14 now, that's on the live stream right now. So please, if you can, go over to CashApp and you can put the $ and donate at blackhammer.org. That's CashApp, the cash sign, blackhammer.org. Or you can go to blackhammer.org/ donate. And you can also go to gofundme.com / blackhammer.org. Now, if you donate through the Cash App, make sure you put in the notes for Atlanta Unit Homeless Food Drive. Or you can just abbreviate it. Yeah. And
our links are posted in the description.
Yes.
So if you want to donate, all the links are there. Blackhammer or cash sign in front of that. That's the Cash App. You can donate there. You can go to blackhammer.org / donate. Or you can go to GoFundMe, www.gofundme.com / blackhammer. Just make sure you label it for the food drive so that we can allocate those funds for that particular purpose.
Yes. So y'all know our last food drive, it was a great success. We were able to feed over 100 people. We had so many comrades come out. It was such a powerful event, and we're trying to do it again. And again, that's January 18th. So today, this morning, we have a goal of $50. So who now can go ahead and make a donation or make a pledge to help us reach our goal of $50?
And no amount is too small. So if you got $5, if you got $10, if you got $30, it all goes toward the same purpose. So
yes,
drop your pledges right here. We'll record it, but we want to reach a goal of $50 before this live stream is over.
Yes.
So we can be on our way to feeding another 100 people for the next food drive.
Yes.
So.
All right. So before we kick this thing off, we're not going to even start. We need to see who can donate, who can pledge at least $5 right now. All you got to, and you can donate it right now, or you can pledge it, meaning that you can put that you're going to donate, and just with the date that you can turn in your donation, we'll record it, and then we'll just follow up with you to make sure that we get it in. But who right now can donate at least $5 to the Atlantic Unit Homeless Food Drive? We need it, y'all. Tell them about it.
We need it because we're trying to feed. Listen. Black Hammer is an organization that is about serving this community.
Yes.
And how do we do that if we don't go out to the community, have food for these people to eat? And unfortunately, we have to go to the grocery stores to pick up the food. We need supplies to make that happen. So if you got
I think we got one $5. Yes, and that is from Ryan.
All right, Ryan.
Black Power, Ryan. Thank you so much. Okay, Bam, look at that. We already down to 45.
So we got 45 left to get, but y'all, we serve our community, and that's how we do it. We go out and we serve the homeless.
Yes.
We organize cleaning up our communities.
Yes.
And right now that involves money, that involves resources.
Yes.
So if you're able to help donate, drop those pledges right here. $5, like I said, $3, $10, whatever you got. Payday was a couple of days ago.
Yes.
If y'all been shopping and everything like that, then why not donate to feed the homeless? Like, seriously. It's this is what they say. This is the month of giving.
Yes, exactly. Give to your community. Give to your people.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And we understand that, in giving, like putting on a homeless food drive, it's just it's a means to mobilize, not only our people, to participate in these types of actions, but it's also to mobilize, our brothers and sisters who have been demoralized through, homelessness, through poverty. And through these homeless food drives, not only are we able to, feed our brothers and sisters, but we're also able to appreciate them and, just express to them that we haven't given up hope on them, and that we understand that even a homeless person, even our homeless, African brothers and sisters can be organized to participate in their own liberation. And we do that through the means of putting on these homeless food drives. So let's get another donation of $5, and we can start. Black Power, comrade. Thank you for that, comrade. So now we only need $40 more before the live is over. So we're gonna go ahead and get this thing kicked off. But Comrade Robert, please let us know if you're going to donate today or on a later date, so we can make sure we have that recorded correctly. So now all we need is $40 more to reach our goal, and we already have $110 so far we have been able to raise. So again, all we need is $40 more before this episode is over with. So let's go ahead and kick this thing off. So continuing from, again, we're in the middle of chapter 2 of how Europe underdeveloped Africa. And before we continue, Comrade Walter Rodney is getting ready to give us some examples of African societies prior to European invasion. And he says this by, the remainder of this section will be devoted to a review of the principal features of several of the most developed societies and states of Africa in the last 1,000 years or so before Africa came into permanent contact with Europe. So, one of his first examples that he goes into is Egypt. And, he lays out that up until the 7th century and onward, Egypt was dominated by Arab and Turkish rule. And, you know, a lot of us have heard about, you know, how Arabs participated in, you know, the colonization of Africans, you know, even before, you know, the invasion of Europeans. And so Walter definitely comments on that. And he says that the Turkish and the Arabs were able to colonize Egypt. And he said what was able to make this this colonization so so aggressive is the fact that Egypt became in this relationship where they were sending like food and resources abroad. And he says that this is what attracted, you know, foreign rulers who were escaping their imperialist masters in the countries that they were in. Right. So meaning that, you know, the Arabs and, you know, the Turkish people came to Egypt to act as the elite there in order to escape the forces that were oppressing them in their lands.
Just like in Europe.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So he talks about that, and he also talks about how most of when Egypt became a feudal state, a lot of the feudalism was brought about by the military rulers that came as a consequence of the Arabs and the Turkish occupying Egypt. And he says that a lot of those foreign rulers were military captains and things of that nature. And that is how they were able to, you know, form the feudalism in Egypt. Now, mind you, the societies that we're talking about, Walter is taking us through these transitions of, you know, the societies moving from communalism to feudalism to capitalism. So a lot of these African societies are still in these transitions, you know, from communalism to feudalism. And he says that, you know, these foreign forces were able to expedite, you know, the changes from communalism to feudalism. Yeah.
And then I was looking too at the fact that when you're dealing with these transitions and everything, you know, it highlights the fact that feudalism is basically like you have a select few that own majority of the land, whereas most people have to work the land, and it's really unfair the way that they're being taxed with the things that they're able to produce. Like it said, the peasants had with little or no land were known as Fellaheen. And in Europe, there are legends about the exploitation and suffering of Russian serfs, and then they compared that in Egypt, the exploitation of the Fellaheen was carried out even more thoroughly. The feudalists had no interest in the Fellaheen beyond seeing that they produced revenue. Most of what the peasants produced was taken from in the form of tax, and the tax collectors were asked to perform a miracle of taking from the peasants even that which they did not have when their demands were not. So there's already that, with this feudal state, it's already that line of exploitation that's happening really heavily due to those foreign powers.
Yeah. Black Power. I don't mean to interrupt you, Conrad, but we just got another $20 donation by Conrad Jose. Black Power. Thank you so much for that, Conrad Jose. So now all we need to raise is $20, and I feel, Conrad Nyah, I don't know if you feel it in the atmosphere, but it looks like we might surpass our goal this morning of $50. So let's see how the morning progresses on.
Let's put it in the air.
Yeah, let's put it in the air. Yeah, but I definitely want to unite with what you were just laying out. And, you know, in terms of the role of the military, what they played in this whole colonization of Egypt, what Walter Rodney also makes clear is that a lot of the political power in Egypt was in the hand of the military, like the military captains and things of that nature. And they then delegated that power of the government to the bureaucrats. So, you know, like the ruling class and things of that nature. And just like you were speaking to the Fellaheens, which basically were the equivalents of the serfs and the peasants, you know, that we see in Europe when Europe was, you know, based in feudalism. And a lot of the land in Egypt was distributed to military captains, not to, you know, the people of the land, but to, you know, these Arab rulers who invaded Egypt. When they brought their military captains, the land was first given to them. And then just like Comrade Nyah was saying about the Fellaheens, and then by the 15th century, the majority of the land in Egypt was owned by the Sultan and his military captains. And, you know, just like you were saying, the Philistines were brutalized.
Yep.
And if they, you know, they had to pay taxes. And again, if they did not pay taxes, then they were brutalized. And then he also makes a comment about how there were peasant revolts, you know, in the early part of the 7th century as well, too. I'm sorry, of the 18th century. You know, sometimes you be writing real fast when you take your notations. It just be looking like chicken scratch or whatever. So, all right. So next he speaks about, we move on to Ethiopia. And you know, in a lot of these societies, what he lays out is that a lot of these societies were like steeped in Christianity.
I found that interesting too, because I mean, well, first of all, diehard Christians will tell you that it has its, and I'm not, no shade, let me make that clear, will tell you that Christianity has its inceptions in Africa. And I mean, so what it says here is that basically from the 1st century AD, that those people that were there were Christianized. I don't know that it's necessarily saying that it was actually born there, but it was just, there was already a form of colonialization that was happening, and that it had been brought there, and that, I guess that dynasty kind of, you know, implemented or disseminated that out to the people to follow that land, follow that rule. But it was also under a foreign rule as well. That's Ethiopia.
And you got to understand, like, with foreign rule comes these different types of religions, comes these different types of ideology. And he even, Walter Rodney even lays out later on within this chapter that, you know, Islamic, you know, religion and Christianity was brought to Egypt, was brought to Ethiopia through foreign invaders. So, I mean, that's just indicative to the fact that, you know, Christianity and, you know, Islamic religion was not necessarily, you know, how do you say, founded, indigenous to Africa. So he says that the peak of Ethiopia can be seen through the kingdom of Axum, and that's Axum. And he says it was founded near the Red Sea by Sabine origin. And that was like near he said on the other side of the Red Sea. But what he makes clear is that the following kings of the kingdom of Axum were not foreign agents, meaning that the kings that began to rule in the kingdom of Axum had become completely Africanized. They were from Africa. So like the foreign rulers, you know, of course, Europe, oh God, I'm about to say European. Well, of course, you know, Ethiopia did face invasion, but the succession of, how do you say, like kings, royalty, or whatever you want to call it, was based in, in Africa. And it goes back to the 1st century AD. So that's a very, very long time ago.
I was gonna say we met our goal.
Oh, we met our goal.
Alex just donated another $20.
Black power, right on.
So we don't have to stop there.
No, we do not. So if we being that we raised our $50 in the first 19 minutes of the live stream, I think we can go for another 50.
Let's go for another 50.
Let's go for another 50. We bad. We started out with 50. Let's make our goal 100 for today's episode. So right on. Again, go to Cash App, $BlackHammerOrg. Make sure you put in the notations. This is for the Atlanta Unit Homeless Food Drive. You can also go to GoFundMe / BlackHammerOrg. I think you can put a notation for what the donation is for. So you can do that at GoFundMe, and you can also go to blackhammer.org/donate and make a contribution through there as well.
And the links are pinned.
Pinned right there. Black Power. So y'all, we're not gonna try. We're gonna raise another $50 before the live stream is over. So make your pledges, make your donations now. And if you put in the comments you're making a pledge, please just let us know the date that you plan on turning in your pledge so somebody can get in contact with you and follow up with you.
Black Power. I'm excited.
Okay, so back to chapter. Okay. So he continues to talk about like the ruling class, which was Christianized in the first few centuries of the kingdom of Exum and things of that nature, and so much so that the emperors in Ethiopia were referred to as the conquering lion of Judah. So, yeah. And what was most prevalent in Ethiopia, which Comrade Walter speaks to, is the creation of the churches that these Africans made out of solid rock. Oh, yeah. Like, they were able to make churches out of solid rock.
Which was very labor demanding. Like, which is why that class system really had to come into play here, because the people that were they said the top, I'm not saying this right, ecclesiastics, which were like the clergymen and everything, they were the nobility, and then you had the class that was forced to build those structures, make those rocks, which was just very labor intensive. So there's already that class division right there.
And then he just also speaks about, like the church and state apparatus being very close in alliance, and also that the wealth in Ethiopia at this time was pretty much agriculture based. So that meant like cereal growing, and through this process they were able to do horse rearing, like raising horses and stuff like that. And he also makes the comment that, even though Ethiopia at this time had feudalistic qualities, he did say that the lands were communally owned, meaning that people within the Africans within the villages had access to the land. It was communally owned, and then there was land that was directly owned by the crown as well too. So
if you guys have a hashtag read that back, something that stood out to you in this, make sure you post it so we can discuss that. Because we want to see what stood out to you guys. I'm trying to see. I'm not sure if I'm saying your name right. You're not. Shakur Truth, spirituality covered Africa prior to Islam or Christianity, and that is very true.
Most definitely.
Sid is asking who became Africanized. Exposure probably okay. So I just want to make sure that we're covering all the. It didn't ask in the GoFundMe. Okay,
probably by the notation.
Yeah. Okay. So, but yeah, if you have a hashtag read that back, put it in the comments and we'll go over it. Alex said, under feudalism everywhere, church and state were in close alliance. Brother Walter will go on to explain that the function of religious is to unify the split between ruling and oppressed classes who would otherwise be completely opposed. Black
power. All right, comrades. So, I'm trying to see if any other notations on Ethiopia.
I was looking at here where it says, for instance, in the early 15th century, Turkish artisans settled in the country and made coats of mail and weapons for the Ethiopian army. So that's already, like I said, we're just going over the fact that there was just foreign rule that had some level.
Our producer on set giving us some notes.
Oh, you giving us notes?
I'm sorry, Conrad, go ahead.
No, that was it. I was just reading about the Turkish kind of involvement with their development of some of their weapons and stuff like that.
Black power. Okay. So before we move on to Nubia, because now he goes into Nubia, I want to see if we can get another donation of $5 from somebody watching this live. We got 19 people watching right now, so Somebody pledge or donate $5 so we can sum up Nubia. Are you excited about this next homeless food drive coming?
I'm very excited.
Are you excited?
I'm excited because even with the last one, the fact that we gave that food out as fast as we did,
oh my
that
goodness.
means there's a need for it. Which just means there's a need for us to continue doing this. And there's just, I mean, the homelessness in Atlanta, really any metropolitan area, is reflective of what colonialism has done to our communities. And I don't understand why we wouldn't. I mean, and not to mention, there are more and more people, colonized people, becoming homeless today. More and more people. Statistically, you can see that in the fact that the rent prices are going higher and higher. People are, you know, even working jobs can barely afford their rent. And so that could really be anybody. This doesn't discriminate against people who have kids. If their parents are homeless, they're homeless too. So we are serving our community in a way that's like beyond what we can say is needed, because there are so many people that don't, it's normal for them to go a day without a meal.
Yeah, and that's not even to mention, you know, that Atlanta is, a city that is developing rapidly. And with that development comes gentrification and different forms of raising your rent, and the forms of, you know, African people having generational homes, like, you know, Big Mama's house, the house that you celebrated every holiday, every birthday, you know, from people actually being born within these homes, are now faced with this form of gentrification where they're having codes, you know, different city codes thrown on the homes. Like, if your grass isn't cut, or if you don't have these bushes taken down, like, is your
roof.
And it's being raised in like astronomical ways, and so much so, like, you can, on one side of the street, you see all of these new houses being built, then directly across the street, you see all of this rampant poverty and things of that nature. And again, this is can be directly tied to the homelessness that we see in the city, because what is your 70-year-old grandma supposed to do when she has this $700 city code thrown on her home that she can't afford to pay?
And she's on a fixed income. She's not going to get any additional money. She's disabled. She's having to pay for medications or choose to eat something.
And that's the reality. And then you can't help grandma out because the $7.50 that you make in that McDonald's, that's not even enough to help you pay your light bill. So these are, you know, it's an accumulation of things, you know, that all can be summed up under, you know, what we understand to be colonialism. So this is why it's so important that, you know, not only the Atlanta unit chapter put on homeless food drives, but every chapter that we have within Black Hammer put on homeless food drives, because we have to be there for our people. We have to be there to meet the needs of the people, you know, and this is what we want to do. So let us see some donations. Make your pledge. You can go to CashApp $BlackHammer.org, GoFundMe.com/BlackHammer.org, or BlackHammer.org/donation, and just make sure that you indicate that you're donating to the Atlanta Homeless Food Drive, so we can make sure those resources get delegated to the proper area.
So what's on the menu?
On this menu this time, what we're going to do, we have ham and turkey cheese sandwiches, along with granola bars, fruit, and a bottle of water. Now, we wanted to struggle to do some cooked meals this time, but because we're working with a smaller budget and, you know, just the lack of time, we don't have, you know, to raise the amount of resources that we did the last time. But we want to be able to, you know, give the people something. And, you know, a meal is a meal. And once we're able to, you know, get these, once the Atlanta unit chapter is able to establish its economic development base, then, you know, this is the course that we have to take. But I want to say that the Atlanta unit is working on its economic development base, so that way, you know, we could just say, all right, now next week we're gonna have another homeless food drive, or we're gonna do it this way, we're gonna do it that way, because we want, you know, the Atlanta unit, we in all chapters have to strive to be, economically independent, and we want to have that component. So that is something that we're working on. But until then, we need your support, we need your donations. So please donate whatever you can. It's the season of giving. So make sure you just give what you can. Black power. All right, so next up, Comrade Rodney speaks about Nubia, and he makes it clear that Nubia was also another region under Christianity. And I want to just speak to the advent of Nubia and how it came about, because Nubia, as Comrade Rodney says, there are 3 small states that arose after the hairs. Let me read it. Okay. So he says, Nubia was another Christian region in Africa, but one which is not so famous as Ethiopia. In the 6th century AD, Christianity was introduced into the Middle Nile in the districts once ruled by the famous state of Kush, Meroe. In the period before the birth of Christ, Kush was a rival to Egypt in splendor, and it ruled Egypt for a number of years. Its decline in the 4th century AD was completed by attacks from the then expanding Aksum, which is the kingdom that we just spoke about in Ethiopia. Yeah. So this is where we find out, the origins of Nubia, and he says the 3 small Nubian states which arose sometime afterwards were to some extent the heirs of Kush. Although their conversion to Christianity, it was the religion which dominated Nubian culture. So just some other notations on that. So Nubia was able to withstand Arab and Islamic rulers up until the 14th century. And, so now in current periods, what Comrade Rodney says now is that a lot of what, the so-called scholarly interest in Nubia was the building of these red brick churches. And even if you Google, red brick churches in Nubia, you see all of these, well, they're basically like ruins now, but right. These were churches that, the Nubians at that time built out of red brick. And also they had monasteries as well too. And he makes the comment that, through the building of these structures, this had to require like large mobilizations of labor. Yes. That means that, people were coerced into doing this, and also people were, pretty much brutalized. And he makes the comment that the monasteries that, these Africans built, the monasteries served as the units of production, and they were comparable to the manors that you might have seen owned by a landlord in feudal Europe. So there was definitely, this relationship of this extent of exploitation, going on in Nubia at this time. And he also says that the peasants were illiterate, but they were also non-Christian. So you can also understand, like the how do you say, like the conflict between the ruling class and the peasants. And he doesn't give us like a certain name for the peasants or anything else of that nature. But he then goes on to say that the Christian state, was eliminated by the Muslims, and then at one point in time, the Africans in Nubia switched from Christianity to, is it Muslim? Islam. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry.
Basically, yeah, that's what I took from this particular development most, was the fact that it was a Christian state, and then it converted through it being conquered to an Islamic state mostly, which was the reason for the ruins of the churches. And then, but you still had the mass majority. So, what this is bringing to me is like, and I've heard it before, but actually reading it here, is really like, there was before the coming of like the Europeans and the Christian force. I mean, it was already there. Then you had the Islamic enslavement and colonization prior to, which was already exploiting that area of Africa. Yeah. And So other places had already kind of pretty much moved away from the communal sense, and that they were trying to get their interests met at Africans' expense.
Yeah. Black Power, I unite. So who got 5 on it? Who got 5 on it?
While we waiting on somebody got 5 on it, Alex said gentrification is another relationship between development and underdevelopment pointed out in the book. White power cannot develop without taking African generational wealth and prosperity, and that is absolutely true.
That is so true. Thank you so much for that comment, Comrade Alex. So come on, y'all, who got 5 on it? Where our next $5, our $20, our $10? Or $2, maybe even $1.
Wherever the spirit leads you to donate. You do know where it's going.
Yes.
We are feeding the homeless on the 18th of January. We will be doing that at
Woodruff in Hurt Park, which is situated in the downtown area of Atlanta. And we're going to be out there from 11 to 2 p.m. So, I mean, not only are we going to, feed the homeless, but this is also an opportunity to meet, members of the Black Camel organization. We always go out and eat after, we perform an action to build camaraderie, for you to ask us any questions about the Atlanta unit, ask us any questions about Black Hammer in general, and just get to know the Chiefs, get to know the revolutionary people who are working in the interest of us all.
And I want to say this too. I don't know. First of all, if you're in Atlanta, if you want to hit us up to get involved, like with helping us pass out the food,
yes,
you can do that. You can let us know right here. But the other thing is, if you have never been to Atlanta, and I'm sure this is no different from any other metropolitan area, tent cities. Have you seen them? Right off the interstates. And when I'm telling you that the population of homelessness is out of control here, it's to the point where you can literally just drive through Atlanta and literally see tent cities set up around interstates 20, 75. And this is where this is people's real reality. Like,
yes,
this is what they experience. So there is definitely a need of feeding the homeless here. And serving the homeless here. And I mean, homeless food drives are one thing, but then there's also the need of housing and things of that sort. But the only way we're going to be able to combat those contradictions is by taking care of ourselves.
Yeah.
That is outlined in our principles of unity and what we believe as an organization. The Black Panther Party followed that model as well.
Yes.
And so we are trying to lead by that example in bringing people into the fold of being a participant in their liberation by doing it ourselves. We should not expect that, the state is going to take care of us. They have already told you what they think about you and what they think about your homelessness. And so that is something that suits their interests. In order for them to be in this position they're in, there has to be a people who is at the very bottom,
yes,
who is exploited. So if there's anything that you cannot... But if there's anything that you can do to help with that, like I said, there's no amount that's too small. But $5, $10 towards going in the mouths of starving people, starving colonized people. I don't know where else I would rather that go than that.
Exactly. And I just want to say that again, also, if you are local to Atlanta and you aren't able to, donate resources, you can donate bread, you can donate cheese, you can donate lunch meat, you can donate fruit, you can donate granola bars, you can donate water bottles.
Yes.
Anything that we need to make sure that this food drive goes off to with a success. And I just also wanted to say that I unite with everything that you just laid out, Comrade Nyah. And I used to drive Lyft in the city, and at one point in time, like, there's an exit off of 285, if I'm not mistaken. And every time around the same time of the afternoon, which is pretty much the height of traffic, like around 5 p.m., you can get off of this exit, and there's literally like 5 to 10 African brothers and sisters holding their homeless signs, walking up to the cars that are stuck in traffic. Ooh, we got... Ooh.
Mac always come through. What's up, Mac? Black power.
Black Power Comrades, so we have raised $75 towards our goal for $100 this morning. So all we need is $25 more to complete our goal of $100 for this morning's goal. Black Power, thank you so much, comrade. Move, move, Mac. Move, 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 move. But yeah, I just wanted to make that comment again. I mean, to just, only expound on everything that you laid out, Comrade Nyah, and just, speak to the problems of homelessness, within, not only within Atlanta, but wherever wherever African and colonized people are located in general. And, we actually have a manual that I created. And so it's pretty much, it speaks to putting on your own homeless food drive. So if you live in an area and you just so happen you're not a member of Black Hammer, but there may be comrades within your area, we can hook you up. If you want to put on a homeless food drive, we can send you the manual to lay out how you do that, the process of doing it, the process of preparing the food and everything else of that nature. This is not just something that Black Hammer can do. We want to provide you with the tools in order to do so as well. So, yeah, Black Power. Okay, so we just need to raise $25 more and we have reached our goal for this morning. So next we're going to move on to the Maghreb, and I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing this wrong. But this part was exciting to me because the Maghreb are the Moors. We hear about, especially,
Yes.
The Hoteps,
They love the Moors. They love them. You can't keep Moors up out of their mouth.
Yeah, so this is where the Moors originate from. And so in the breakdown of the area, it's called the Maghreb. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Yeah. So he starts out by saying the Islam religion was another major role in the feudal development of Maghreb. I'm gonna just say Moors, of the Moors. And also we see a lot of Islamic dynasties within the Moors as well too. And he also comments on the blend of foreign influences that we see in the Moors, which came from Eastern Mediterranean, and also the Berber people, who were the indigenous people of the Moors, the Maghreb area, or the Moors area. And he also says that this area came to be the cross-section of the Roman and Byzantine empires. So, yeah. Prior to Muslim rule, the people of the Moors were nonconformist Christians. So he says, he makes the comment that it was, how do you say? Not non-dominational.
He said nonconformist.
Yeah, but he says it's called Donatism. Yeah. So yeah. So he also talks about the achievement of the Moors, and he says that they had a very strong naval, military, cultural, and commercial aspects, to the area, and so much so that they controlled the Western Mediterranean area. Were you getting ready to say something?
No, it was just something funny to me because it was something where he was talking about how he says as one index to the standard of social life. He's been pointing
This
out
is the part. Hold on, wait.
Some facts, right? We're about to get into some
Before
facts.
you get right there, because I know it was coming. But anyway, so he makes the comment of how, the Moors were able to rule to hold sway over the Western Mediterranean area. And also, they took over Portugal and Spain at one point in time as well, too. And also, they were already deep in France by the year 732 AD, before the Europeans, I guess, turned the tides. But Africans were already in France around this time,
trading and doing everything. Yeah.
And he also says that the Berbers, again, the indigenous African people, I'll just say the original people of this area, they were pastoralists, meaning that they cultivated the land. They had like goats, cattle, and things of that nature. And he also makes the comment that the social structure in this area was pretty much patriarchal, meaning that a lot of the clans were organized by a council of adult males. And he says the land was also communally owned, but the hostility that most of the peoples faced at that time was based in like kinship, meaning that if you didn't have immediate blood ties to the land, then you could not have access to that land. But he comes back and then says that in the face of Arab invasion, that is when, the Berber, the Africans came together to fight that off. And then he goes on to say that because the Berbers weren't able to create a solid political state, we then see that Maghreb was then split into 3 different states, in which we now know to be Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia. So, yeah. And then he also does speak to the component of slaves at this point in time in Maghreb as well, too. And as we also know that the Moors did enslave African people. Not to the extent that we see, that we experience now, like child slavery, but that was a component there as well, too.
That was like a class thing, right?
Yeah.
Kind of in a feudal sense, like the indentured servants and things of that sort. Not like you said.
But go ahead.
Well, something else that I think we've all heard, but that's mentioned here was the provision of hygiene as one index to the standard of social life. It's been pointed out, and this is on page 54 in my book, were common in the cities, pointed out that public baths were common in the cities of the Maghreb at the time when in Oxford the doctrine was still being propounded that the washing of the body is a dangerous act.
So this is why you as an African person can literally say to these motherfucking cave beasts, bitch, we taught y'all how to bathe. We taught y'all how to bathe, okay?
I mean,
it's historical proof.
When you study the conditions of Europe, they were literally sitting in shit and piss everywhere in this particular time frame. So it makes perfect sense. I mean, the plagues that were breaking out, hell, the shit that they brought to the U.S.
And just if you look at the journals, if the comments, not necessarily the journals, but the way that the indigenous people, and Ghazi likes to make this joke all the time, but when the conquistadors came to the Americas, the native people knew that they were coming because of the stench, because of the smell.
Oh, yeah.
Before they even got in the area, they could smell. So you want to wonder why they were able to infest these blankets with smallpox that they gave to the indigenous people of the Americas, because Europeans were already suffering from this shit in Europe. So what did they do? They used their disease-ridden asses to their advantage to commit genocide against the indigenous people of the Americas.
I mean, and that's a historical fact.
It's a historical fact.
It's not, these are facts. This did happen, and so that was something that they were able to share with them.
Yeah, and I just wanted there's another portion of this chapter that I just wanted to read really quickly, where he says none of the African societies discuss so far can be said to have thrown up capitalist forms to the point where the accumulation of capital became the principal motive force.
Right.
However, they all had flourishing commercial sectors, money lenders, and strong handicraft industries, which were the features which ultimately gave birth to modern capitalism through evolution and revolution. And I say that to say, at the point where he says they already have flourishing commercial sectors, money lenders, and strong handicraft industries, this is the process of internal evolution that Comrade Rodney speaks to that was disrupted by the invasion of Europeans.
Yes.
And that's not to say that none of these institutions did not have their contradictions,
Right.
but then again, that can't be said without stating that African people we weren't given the opportunity to develop
Right.
and to combat the contradictions that we saw. Because even though these communities, these societies did develop to a feudal society, they did not go into capitalism. So that says a lot. That says a lot. That if we were given the opportunity to work out, the contradictions that we saw in feudalism, because as he says, the majority of the societies within, that he's speaking of, the majority of the land was communally owned. It was still communally owned. So, I mean, yeah.
So we got another donation. I'll be able to send $10 today by 5. That's from, sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, Sister Feroz. Anir.
Black Power, Comrade. Thank you so much, Comrade. Feroz. Feroz. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, girl. This colonized tongue,
So we got $15 more.
$15 more to raise, y'all. So we got 14 people, so that's roughly $1 per person. So, I mean, that's only $14, but somebody can donate $2, right? Is that the right math?
You mean for, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with that.
All right, $15 more. Let's see if we can get that raised as we speak about the last, not the last society that Comrade Walter raised up, but just, discusses, but just the last, this is the last African society that we'll sum up for this portion of the episode of the Revolutionary Book Trial. And so he speaks to now Western Sudan. And Western Sudan wasn't necessarily like a state, but it was comprised of Ghana, Mali, and Songhai. And these were three different kingdoms within the area of Western Sudan. I think we just got another donation.
Did we get another donation? Red donated $25. That's what's up. That's what's up.
So we just surpassed our goal. Wait, what's 75 plus 25? 105, right?
No. So we had 85
I'm
plus 25.
slow, y'all, look.
So 110.
Wait, we had 85?
110. Yeah, because the sister said she was gonna donate 10 by today.
Oh.
We had 75 before when Mac donated 25. So yeah.
Black Power, we have surpassed our
That's
goal.
what's up. Y'all bad. Y'all know y'all bad. See, that's how I know we can do it. That's how I know revolution can be reached in our lifetime, because y'all bad and we bad and we can take care of our own. That's how I know you do it. So I don't want to hear we can't do it. I know y'all can do it because y'all love y'all people.
Black Power. Black Power. Black Power.
Black Power.
All right, comrades, let's move on to, again, the Western Sudan. And again, this area was comprised of the Kingdom of Ghana, Mali, and Songhai. And so, what does this say? Dang, I need to work on my writing.
What'd you say?
Trading states.
Yeah.
They were known as trading states. Y'all, my chicken scratch is just bad.
Oh, how can I read your writing better than you can?
So Mali, Ghana, and Songhai were trading states, and he says that what they were comprised of, the trading resources, I guess you could say, for lack of a better term, was rice, millet, and cotton. And there was also mining going on in these three kingdoms as well. And they were able to mine iron, salt, copper, and there was definitely there was a gold trade,
right?
But none of the gold mining didn't originate in any of these three kingdoms, but Ghana was able to, through its expansion, and I think he speaks to...
he does speak to that.
He speaks to the area of where they did most of the gold mining.
Oh, hold on. To the south of Ghana lay the important source of gold in the upper Senegal and its tributary in the Falimi. It is said that Ghana obtained its gold by silent or dumb barter, but that's what he goes into it. And then he goes into it here. I guess like how that was set up and let's see. The story of dumb barter for gold in West Africa is repeated on several accounts, starting with ancient Greek scripts. It is clearly a rough approximation of the first attempts at exchange of a people coming into contact with strangers. It was not a permanent. So he's talking about the bartering system. I'm trying to get where he talks about like during the rule of Ghana, the people who of the two principal gold fields, Bambuk and Bor, were drawn into regular trade relations with the Western Sudan. Ghana probably and Mali certainly exercised political rule over the two regions.
And that's again, these areas were where the gold mining took place. And another major component that we see in these three areas were the domestication of animals. And he says that there was a large presence of cattle, goats, and things of that nature. And just that, these three, and even if you look up the history of Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, you can see the history of trade within these three kingdoms. And he also makes the comment that he says they also reached the coast, are very near to the coast of Gambia, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Ivory Coast, and Ghana. The Doulas, which were the traders in these three kingdoms, handled a long list of African products such as salt from the Atlantic coast in the Sahara, cola nuts from the forests of Liberia and Ivory Coast, gold from Akan country in the modern Ghana, leather from Hassaland, dried fish from the coast, cotton cloth from many districts, and especially from the central western area of Western Sudan, iron from Fota, the Jalan, and modern Guinea, shea butter from the upper Gambia, and a host of other local articles. So within these three kingdoms and their surrounding areas, trade was absolutely, off the chain. So, yeah. Black Power, comrades. So, let's see, is there anything?
Well, I like how he went into like the long distance trade because they weren't even just to that particular area. On page 50, in my book, is page 59. It says long distance trade across the Sahara had special characteristics. Some scholars have spoken of the camel because they used the camel to get back and forth as a ship of the Sahara and the towns, which the camel caravans entered on either side of the desert. So they were talking about how their trade happens like over hundreds of thousands of miles, which is another, thing that people will try to say they didn't even know how to trade outside of their general area, but they did. It's significant in the Western Sudan, never provided any significant capital for the Saharan trade. The capital came from the merchants of Fez, I'm assuming that T is silent, Lemson, and other cities of the Maghreb, and they sent their agents to reside in the Western Sudan. So there's a sense of exploitation there because it wasn't for the benefit of the area. But so they didn't benefit economically, but the trade patterns were already there and the resources were there.
Faraz said, okay, we both pronounced it correctly.
Oh, that's what's up. Okay.
Right on.
I like when I get people's name right.
Okay, so the last portion that I wanted to comment on and read is where he speaks about feudalism in the area of West Sudan. And he says, under feudalism, the ruling class in the state for the first time tore away the social institutions which prevented the first embryo states from exercising direct action on each subject. That is to say, feudalism brought about a series of direct obligatory ties between the landed rulers and the landless subjects. So even now you see the feudalism that was experienced in Africa was even still different from the feudalism that was based in Europe.
Right.
And he says, in the Western Sudan, the clear-cut class division had not come into existence. By the time of Mali's preeminence in the 13th and 14th century, a small amount of local slavery had come into existence, but by the end of the 15th century, there were both chattel slaves and domestic slaves comparable to feudal serfs. For instance, in Senegal, the Portuguese traders found that there were elements in the population who worked most days for their masters and a few days per month for themselves, a budding feudalist tendency. Nevertheless, though, most of the population still had ample access to land through their kin, and in political terms, that meant the authority of the ruling class was exercised over the heads of families and clans rather than over each subject. So even in this instance, we don't see feudalism here as is it even a word? Exploitative.
Exploitive.
Let's go with exploitive that we see in Europe. Okay, comrades. So that is where we're going to stop for today. I just wanted to comment that even though I think we covered Egypt, West Sudan, Maghreb, Nubia, and
Ethiopia.
Yeah, and Ethiopia. So the next societies that he's going to cover is the interloctrine
I'm
zone.
gonna say interlacrostrine.
Girl.
I think. Zone.
Zimbabwe. And then he concludes. So we're going to finish. Well, for our next episode, we're going to start with the interlacustrine zone all the way up until chapter 3. So that is our next. That's your next readings up until our next episode of the Revolutionary Book Trap. Before we go, I just really want to give a salute and just express our appreciation to everybody who donated today to help us towards our goal for the Atlanta Homeless Food Drive. Our appreciation can just not be expressed enough. Comrade Huey says that, the revolutionaries survive off of the strength of the people.
Yes.
And without you who support us, there would be no Black Hammer. There would absolutely be no Black Hammer. And it's just so hard to think that the organization is not even 1 year old yet, and we have just been able to mobilize and do so many wonderful things. But just again, thank you for helping us reach our goal. We're going to be back here again. Our next 3 episodes are going to be dedicated again to raising resources for our next homeless food drive. That's January 18th. Right there at Woodruff and Hurt Park, downtown, smack in the middle of downtown Atlanta, where we're going to be feeding our brothers and sisters. And please feel free to share all of the donation links with your friends and your families. Tell them where they can donate and things like that. And let's have another successful homeless food drive.
And if you're not a member of Black Hammer, join today. The link is there, I believe. But if not, it is www.blackhammer.org/sign-up. And yours truly will be in contact with you to make sure that you get put in the right place, so your intellect, your labor, your resources can go to the betterment of our community. So in the spirit of Huey, since you brought it up, I'm gonna say all power to the people, because that's where that what you said about the power is in the people, that's where that comes from. All power to the people. So all power to the people, Black power, and we'll see y'all next time.
I was getting ready to say something else, but I forgot.
Damn.
I'm trying to give it a few seconds to come back real quick. Well, being that I lost that thought, another thought popped up into my mind, and that is to make sure to remind you guys about the next public meeting for Black Hammer has been postponed, so we won't be meeting this upcoming Tuesday. So, and then I think is the next meeting
is gonna be on the 31st, so that New Year's Eve, and we're gonna do it at 5 p.m. instead of 7 p.m. so y'all can go out and get your drink on and all that stuff.
All right, comrades. Until next time on the Revolutionary Book Trap, we gonna see y'all later. Black Power.
Black Power.
And do y'all like our new set? Like, we tried
think?
to decorate for y'all and stuff like that. So,
I think
Black Power, y'all.
Black Power.